Hello, Adam. Really
Okay.
nice to see you. Hiya. And hello, anyone that's watching this. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us. So I'm Tracy, and I work for mental health. In fact, I don't. I work for Open Minds Mental Health, which is my company that largely trains people in mental health skills, so mental health first aid and mental health aware. And one of the things that is incredible that I get to do in my work is hear people's stories of experiences that they've had of mental health and mental illness. And so I wanted to create these films to share with you, people who don't get to do that all the time, to hear people's stories, because I think that's how we learn best from people's experiences. I'm not going to talk any more about what I do, but if you want to have a look at our website, it's www.openmindsmentalhealth.co.uk, and there's other films like this and lots of other information on there. But let's just crack on and meet Adam. So Adam, hello. Good to see you.
Yeah.
I'm going to start actually with a question that I haven't asked you to prepare, which is possibly a little bit mean of me. But what's your big passion? What's something in life that you absolutely love that drives you?
Oh, there's sort of a cliched one, and hang on. Obviously, my wife and child.
Goes without saying, yeah.
I'd be killed if I didn't that first off,
Yeah.
didn't run that. So I think there's kind of two, I guess. I'm from Newcastle, so I'm obsessed with football, and I didn't really have a choice with it. It was just my whole life. And then I guess my other passion, which I've started falling a lot more into at the minute, is around coffee. It's kind of my thing. So, and again, I mean, we'll get onto the whole obsessive side of things, but yeah, so I'm slightly into coffee in quite a big way. So yeah, I'm not talking anymore about it because honestly, the next hour.
Will it go? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'll resist. I'll
fall into that
resist
trap.
asking questions about that. Right, we'll do that at another time. Interesting, cool. So we don't know each other very well. We have met on Zoom once before. I've come to know about you because I've worked with your wife, and she's done some training with me, and thought that you would be a really interesting person for me to talk to. So I'm really excited to learn more about you. But so you've had experience of mental illness in the last few years. Do you want to give us an idea of what's been going on for you?
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple of elements really with what I've been through. So there was a time I was so back in, and apologies, I'm not great with the dates on this because it's all a bit of a blur. But there was a time sort of back end of 2020 where I ended up being off work for about 12 months with a sort of a severe incident, I guess. And that brought a lot of things to a head and sort of started me on actually sort of medication and then into therapy and all that sort of stuff. And through that process, then we probably realized there's other stuff that's been going on in the background for a long time, which was kind of, again, contributed to, was brought to a head by whatever the incident. So, yeah, I was at the time I was diagnosed with PTSD as kind of the reason why I sort of disappeared into a black hole for a bit. And then through that process, you start getting into I probably had depression for a lot longer than I ever realized. Certainly bits of anxiety or generalized anxiety disorder. And as I sort of touched upon, various elements of OCD around intrusive thoughts and stuff like that. So they all overlap a little bit. They all sort of feed into each other. It's not sort of one set thing, I guess. But that's when, use the cliche of my journey started, was sort of around that time when I realized I was in a bad place, I guess.
So looking back now, can you see that actually you were dealing with those other mental health conditions throughout your adult life into your childhood?
Yeah, it goes back. Essentially, it goes back. Elements of it go back as long as I can remember. And I think there's elements that actually, if you certainly when you've grown up with them, and certainly if you've sort of had them for as I say, as long as you can remember, You don't know what's normal. I hate it's the
Yeah,
wrong word to use,
yeah,
but you don't know that what you're going through isn't you don't need to be going through. You just think that's how everyone thinks. You think that's the thoughts you have or what everyone has, the sort of the feelings you have are the same as everyone else. So yes, I think when you start unpicking it, then yeah, certainly there was bits of trauma in terms of the PTSD stuff that was kind of accumulating throughout the years without really realizing that I wasn't dealing with it or I wasn't sort of coping with them. And then I'd say that the sort of once someone points out some of the sort of signs of like depression, for example, or the depressive times, and then it's really easy for me to start thinking back to like when I was at uni or when before that or whatever, and go, oh right, that's what was happening.
right,
I just thought I was tired, or I just thought I was
right.
upset. Like I just thought, and actually, yeah, it's sort of it's amazing once you start unpicking some of this stuff. A lot of things start to make sense all of a sudden, which is massively powerful. And I think that's the real benefit. And actually, one of the reasons I want to do stuff like this is kind of going, do you know what? If you start talking to people, you start doing stuff, it can improve. You can cope with it a bit more.
It's really interesting you say that because I think lots of people are really nervous actually about getting a diagnosis or labeling something because in
Mhm.
some ways there's a belief that that's going to send you down the black hole. But actually,
Uh,
sounds like from your perspective, understanding more what's been happening for you has been a trajectory to then being able to deal with it and get
yeah.
more well. So talk us through some of those signs and symptoms that you're now aware of that maybe at the time you weren't.
So I used to like I was sort of flipped it from when I was a kid to when I was an adult. I used to sleep a lot as a kid, and then as an adult, I never slept. I was like, I would have like 3 or 4 hours would be a good night for us. And genuinely, I even joked about this at work. I thought of it like I had some sort of superpower. I thought I was like, this is amazing. I've got so much more time than anyone else, so I can do loads more stuff than anyone else. And that I guess that sort of really played into things. So yeah, so and again it's that sort of thing that I think I didn't realize was actually it's not right. You shouldn't like I shouldn't be working every hour of the day. I shouldn't be working sort of 15-20 hour days and then just sleeping for a little bit or all that sort of stuff. I think the sort of the moments when again, like where you see like you lose days just not being able to get out of bed and stuff like that. I would just go, oh, I'm just catching up on sleep, or just I don't have anything to do today, or I don't need to go out. I can just stay in. I can just sit and read books. I don't have to see anyone, all that sort of stuff. Um, and then as I say that the OCD stuff, yeah, I had kind of some of the cliche stuff about cleaning and stuff like that, but again not the end of the world to have a really clean house. It's sort of like again, I'm sort of just looking at the positive of some of these things. And certainly with the intrusive thought stuff or the way sort of the OCD brain works can be really helpful in certain circumstances and certain settings and stuff like that. It's you think differently to other people. You assess things in a different way. You um kind of describe it as like always on
Yeah.
with the brain. So like you can it sort of made me feel like I was quicker thinking about stuff. It wasn't. It's just I had 20 different things going on at the same time, and my mind was trying to focus on all of them. So again, I thought I was doing a good thing, but actually it was a symptom of what I was doing. So yeah.
Did people around you now, having had conversations with them, think that things
Mhm.
weren't okay with you? Did people ever approach you to say they're worried about you?
Um, I don't. It's difficult. It's difficult to know because like again because it wasn't a change in who I was.
Yeah.
It was kind of just always who I was. So I think that makes it a bit more difficult. Like you don't notice, and then it's sort of like you're on different degrees of your own personality, as they might see it. So like just not sleeping as much rather than gone from normal sleeping to not sleeping or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difficulty of knowing it. I mean, I think certainly, look, one of the things I guess is that I don't have like a load of people really close to us, like Laura and my family. I'm really close to like my immediate family, and then I've always been things sort of like having friendships with people, and then I'd move away, and I'd in my head they're still my best mate. I just haven't spoken to them for 20 years, right? And it's that sort of thing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I would just pick up and drop
Right.
friendships and stuff like that. So again, I guess that would be the thing is going, yeah, Laura certainly noticed when I started going downhill a bit quicker. But again, speaking to her now, she's saying, look, she knew it was longer term than just that sort of 3-4 months when I completely fell off the cliff sort of thing. She knew that it had been going on for longer, and she was able to identify that was going on. But again, it's that sort of thing going, is it just work related stress? Is it just because you're working too hard, or is it because um it's the end of the season and you're not playing football this week, or is it like
Yeah, right.
loads of it? I think you sort of fall into a trap of rationalizing and justifying a lot really quickly. So
I mean, it's fascinating because it sounds like you did a really good job of living your life around the individual that you are, with all of those things that may have made life that much more challenging for you, but you managed it. Um,
mm.
but I guess so. But then you got to a point where your body said, no more, and it forced you to consider how you're managing life.
Yeah, so 2 points. I'll go into sort of what's happened and what pushes the edge, I guess.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think the first point you made, I was still am, I guess, really good at I think I've heard the term masking
yeah,
effectively. So like I present work at him as as it is, and really controlling. Again, it does slightly sort of pick up on some of the OCD elements I've got, but being really careful to manage the persona that people outside see, what people think of it is what people do. And it goes that sort of thinking of stage managing my own appearance and all that sort of stuff. It was a huge part of what I do. So from what I was dressed as to the way my hair looked to what I told people to how I told people, and basically I was hiding a lot of stuff all the time.
exhausting, Adam.
It really is, and I think that's the bit where you go. At some point, it start you can't manage it. You can't hold on to everything at the time. So yeah, I mean, I'd say from my point of view, or from what's happened, it sounds strange running back through it now, but there's kind of and also I think my timeline and my version of it is messed up because I tell Laura this story and she goes, "That's not what's happened. There was way more weeks in between all this sort of stuff." But in my head,
Right, that's interesting.
in my head, this is what's happened, sort of thing. So it came out of what should have been like a really exciting time. So we found out we were pregnant. Oh, sorry, Laura was pregnant, but you know what I mean.
We fine, I reckon.
I'm gonna take some of the credit.
Okay.
So we found out that Laura was pregnant, and to sort of celebrate, I guess. And again, it was during lockdown sort of stuff, so we had limited options. So anyway, I cooked some food, and uh, a couple of days later, Laura was taken to hospital. It was in that time when you could go and visit and stand outside people's houses and all that sort of stuff. So she'd gone down to her mum's house, which was about an hour away from us, where we were living at the time. And she was just in pain, like stomach pain, and was taken to hospital. So she was taken to hospital in Salisbury. I say we were living in Swindon at the time, so
Right,
about
okay.
an hour and a half away. So yeah, she got taken to the hospital, and basically, again, probably not what's happened, but in my head, the food I had cooked had she'd had a weakness in a lower intestine or something like that. So she had a thing called Meckel's diverticulum. Anyway, that had perforated, and so for whatever reason, I put together in my head that it was the stuff I'd done that caused that, even though it's something she's had her whole life, and it's just complete luck of the draw that happened. It's like your appendix bursting and then blaming it on the last meal you ate, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, so she was in hospital. And this was a couple of days after we'd found out that she was pregnant. So for
Scary.
whatever reason, I put it into my head because I couldn't go and see her as much as well, and it was really difficult to get down, and restrictions on who could go in the ward. I got into my head that I had basically killed her and killed the baby. And for clarity, Percy and Laura are absolutely fine. Nothing happened to them. I think she was in hospital for, I'm going to say a week. I have no idea. But anyway, that's what the incident was. So in my head, that thought came into my head, and that stuck, and it sort of spun us out. But I didn't realize that time. So I spent the next, I think the next sort of few weeks. It could have been a couple of months. Again, I don't really know. Of like going to work and trying to act normal, but I I knew I would go into my office in the morning. I know I would come out at night, and then I had no memory of what I was doing during the day. I had no real sort of like I was kind of aware stuff was happening around us, but I didn't. I was kind of in a bit of a lost state. Now that element of it, weirdly, is I don't remember that at all. I've got like no memory for about 12 months around this time. It's a black hole. I've got like little sparks here and there, but which bang. So I'm kind of like remembering what I told Laura at the time that she's now told back to me. It's a really
Okay.
weird
Right.
thing to get my head around. So yeah, so basically after a bit of time being in that sort of state, I um I said to Laura, I was like, I don't think I'm right here. I just kind of realized I was like, something's wrong, and I feel really bad. And I know again from from Laura telling us, I was talking a lot about like giving up work. I was talking about like having to check myself into places, sort of like thinking I just needed to do something. This is the hard bit because as I say, because I can't remember it. This is really like
Mm.
Um, it's a weird one to go through. So I know I was talking about a lot of like really dark negative stuff, about like giving everything up, leaving, whatever. And that's when she said, like you need to speak to work to let them know that you're not well. You need to go to the doctors, get sorted. And that's what I did. So that was kind of like the the point, I guess, in terms of like realizing that something was wrong. And as I say, apparently I sort of started talking about like maybe I could go off and be a teacher. Don't know why I thought that. I don't know where that came from, but I was
That'll
like,
be much less stressful.
yeah, yeah. I probably in my head I probably had a really nice sort of private school where like I only do a lesson a day, just sort of drop in and out, chat a bit, and then the kids that call us by my first name. I'll be a cool
Yeah,
teacher.
yeah,
Like, yeah,
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 yeah. I'd
yeah.
do art or something really like, and it'd be lovely. So for whatever, yeah. So I was kind of like in the space of like I wanted to give everything up, wanted to go out, go away, get away from everything as much as possible. Obviously, I was talking about needing to be hospitalized, needing to be kind of watched over, I guess, and sort of like, yeah. And I know because it's not unusual since then. I know that I was probably actually thinking I needed to not be around.
I was going to ask. So you didn't feel
Yeah,
safe, and and
yeah,
and and you were likely having thoughts of suicide that you
yeah.
maybe you don't recall that, but you think that's
I,
probably
th- I think I know from the bits I remember, and again, it's look, there's a little bit of um, there's a really weird thing. It's like you get asked, well, you don't get asked about it. So I think they're a little bit more
yeah.
tactful with psychiatrists and psychologists. They don't ask you directly. you thinking about it? Especially with an OCD type element on it, because there's part of your brain that goes, that sounds like a good idea, and sort of latches onto it and keeps it as a little suggestion box. But yeah, again, it's a really difficult question to answer because, and again, I don't know if this is everyone or just the way my brain works or whatever. It's like I know certainly after I was, once I start remembering again, once I was going through therapy and stuff like that, I thought about it a lot in a sense of, I would think, look, rationally, if I try to rationalize mental health, that is an option. It's a legitimate option for me. That's kind of how I put it, is going like, I've got a scale of things I can do,
Yeah.
and that is one of them. And look, to be clear, I thought about it in a way of going, well, I don't want to do, like, that's not what I want to do. So it's I thought it was going like, did you think about it? Yeah, but in a way of going, I don't want to go down that route, and I'm really worried about going down that route. But
Right.
that is, yeah. So that's what you kind of go. You think about it, yes, but
It's
I
really
thought in a healthy way, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, it's interesting that you say that you weren't asked, and interesting that link you make with OCD and then planting the seed. I mean, all our training is always about, if you have any inkling that someone might be feeling that way, to ask. Because and you know, I've certainly had this experience of people where I have asked a question.
Mm.
Sometimes they've said no, but I've probably 6 or 7 people I've asked over the last few years. So I've asked probably about 12 times, and about six have said yes. And in every occasion, I've been the only one that they've talked to about it.
Yeah.
And you know, people saying that, you know, I've been wanting to say it's been in my head, and I've just not felt like I can say it out loud. It's felt like a
Mm.
really bad thing to say, or I didn't want to freak people out about it. And
Yeah.
the relief of just being able to say, yeah, it is in my head, and then to be able to have a conversation about how imminent that risk might be and how they can protect themselves. Um,
Mm.
it's this horrible thing to have in your head, even if
Yeah.
when you're not well, you know, as you say that you've differentiated between rational and you know, in your rational head, you know, you don't want to do it. But when you know you're unwell and you're not always in control of your actions and your thoughts, that must make you feel really vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And I know, yeah, I think when you sort of, especially when you're like on your own, and that thought comes in, because then you go like, well, there's only one person here to stop this happening.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes in. So yeah, I mean, I think certainly it was like, whenever it was talked about with my psychiatrist and psychologist and all that sort of stuff, um, I think it was talked about more in terms of like, are you planning to be like, what you're going to do next week? Because if I don't have plans next week, or I don't have plans for
Okay.
tomorrow,
Right.
I'm not going to be around. So I think it was sort of like asked about in the abstract at first, or rather than sort of kind of direct about it. But to be honest, I sort of, when I realized I needed help, I think I sort of made a decision that I was just like, look, you just, I'm not, you're going to get everything,
Yeah.
because I might as well. I've got nothing to lose here. I might as well just, you can have it all. So I talk quite openly about all my feelings across everything. So I was always just like, here's everything. You tell us what we're going to do about it, sort of approach, I guess, with it.
But you know, that takes a lot of courage, doesn't it? I mean, clearly you'd got to a point where
Mm.
it sounds like you, I mean, you just couldn't have carried on. You were not functioning. Your day-to-day
Yeah,
existence was not, it wasn't sustainable.
I think I broke. Yeah,
Right.
I think that's the way I describe it. I just stopped. I stopped work and I broke down. It was like, and I know sort of like, again, I don't think people use the words mental breakdown anymore, but that's kind of genuinely, that's how it. But my brain broke. I sort of I lost it. I was gone. That's kind of how I look at it.
And so at that point then, what were the supports around you? What enabled you
Mm.
to be able to understand that you needed support, and
Mm.
and access support? How did you get the support you needed?
So yeah, I mean, I think I've used this phrase a few times. I was really lucky in terms of what the support I got, and also the outcomes I got. So um, I mean, first of all, it was like Laura pushed us to go and talk to my boss, who again was really supportful, really helpful. I've known him for a long time. I've worked with him for a long time, so I had a good relationship with it. So I work in insurance. I work in life insurance and protection, and income protection, stuff like that. So I was really fortunate that I had a decent sort of support system through work anyway. So I had access to private medical insurance, I had PMI in place, and that meant, again, it feels like it was the same day. It probably wasn't. But I sort of I got put in touch with them. So we had a support line that helped us through, and then we had full private medical insurance. So I got put in touch with occupational health, or whatever the correct phrase for those guys is, to start off with. And at the same time, the private medical insurance, I was able to self-refer into a psychiatrist. So I think the big difference with that, compared to maybe if I wasn't in, oh, I didn't have that cover in place, I didn't have that insurance in place. And the big difference is time scales, to be honest. I think that the sort of support I got from there and in was great as well. But the big difference was I contacted someone 1 week, and I had an appointment with a psychiatrist. I think the week after or 2 weeks after. It was a really short turnaround time in terms of actually getting to speak to someone who could help me through the diagnosis stage, get me into the right sort of therapy sort of stuff, go through some talking therapies with us, and look at medication and stuff like that. Look, I was incredibly lucky, because the guy who I was put in touch with first and foremost, and it was purely by geography, he happened to live about 15 minutes away from us. But he was
a psychiatrist.
the psychiatrist, yeah. So the psychiatrist who I got put in touch with first and foremost was he'd literally wrote a book on trauma. So he was the best possible person that I could have hoped for. So he was able to recognize the signs really quickly. He got me on to medication really quickly as well. I was lucky that that worked as well, because I know a lot. I had some side effects stuff around, like physical side effects. I mean, yeah, over the years, I put on a lot of weight because of the side effects. I had some really bad sort of like stomach cramps every time I started medication. But from a mental point of view, it got me back on track, or back into a place where I could start really unpacking a lot of stuff. And even sort of like one of the symptoms I struggled with a lot was really bad, like flashbacks, anxiety, dreams, all this sort of stuff, like nightmares and stuff like that. And again, he was involved in a trial with some medication stuff that he managed to get me involved with, which worked and reduced my flashbacks massively. So I was having less panic attacks and stuff like that. So there was a load of little steps along the way that I got really lucky with.
Did you say that you used EMDR? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, so
That was him.
no, that was a bit later. So Gordon, who helped us out, so he sort of looked after us for about a year, probably the main part of a year. And that's got me through kind of the worst period, and then starting to be at the point where I could go back to work. Initially on a sort of a phased return, then fully back into work. It was then when I sort of started seeing just I always get these wrong around, psychotherapist.
Right.
So I started doing like talking therapies and stuff like that, and a lot of CBT stuff. After doing that for a while, sometime last year, I think it was. So this time last year, about a year ago. So once I'd actually been doing this for 2 or 3 years, I got suggested to do EMDR. So it came out of, weirdly, one of my close friends is he'd done it, and he'd done it for, I think, anxiety related stuff, but it worked really well. I talked to my therapist about it at the time, and they were great. They were like, look, There's someone within our clinic who does that. It actually works really well. I think it was developed potentially along the lines of helping people with PTSD. So we knew it was going to have a good chance of working. But yeah, so I did, I think it was 4 or 5 sessions of that sort of end of last year, at the beginning of this year. And again, it helped massively. So it sounds like magic. I think I've sort of said to you
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
It sounds like complete magic where someone just sort of waves their finger in front of you and does that for a bit. But I think the process behind it is that it helps the brain process memories. So I would have, certainly with the flashback stuff, I would have these memories of traumatic instances throughout my life that were, every time they came up, every time my sort of brain went, do you remember this? Here's a horrible thing for you to think about for 5 minutes. Um, it would be like a sort of a whole body experience. So like certainly there's one, I talked about that when I was really young, and it's kind of half a memory of if that. But the one thing I can remember is being sat and the sun was on the back of my neck. And when I used to flash back to that, for want of a better phrase, honestly, my neck would get warm. I would like experience it as if it was happening now. And what the EMDR helped is that I still remember that. I still remember that instant. I still remember all the stuff around it. But what it is now is it's a memory, not, I'm not living it. And that it's kind of sorting out that confusion
Yeah.
within my brain, I guess. So it worked really well for me. There is an element of, I'm not really bothered if it is scientifically proven or if it's partly placebo effect or it's a bit of both or whatever. It was really good for me. And again, trying that sort of different versions of therapy is a massive thing for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, anybody's watching who's, you know, I know we've thrown a number of acronyms at you, and I actually don't know what EMDR stands for. Do you?
uh, Eye movement is the EM.
Oh, okay. Uh, yeah, look it up. But I think it's useful for people to know what's out there, to know what to ask if they can have access to. So my
Yeah,
daughter, so another film I've done with my daughter, who experiences extreme anxiety and ADHD. She uses has used EMDR with her psychotherapist, and has, similarly to you, said it's been a game changer. It's really made a difference to her. And you mentioned CBT, so cognitive behavior therapy. I think for a lot of people that's really helpful too. So it's worth being aware of those. Okay, so right, so we talked about the things that have helped you. So
yeah,
as you were talking, I was sort of thinking there's a couple of layers here actually. And I think having people in your world like Laura who don't judge, who accept you, who get it, who aren't making glib comments, who aren't telling you to pull yourself together and all of that, must make a huge difference.
yeah.
If you can't say it out loud because you don't want to be judged and don't have support around you, that must make it much more difficult. The fact that you felt like you could talk to your boss, and that you had an empathetic, caring
Yeah.
response from her.
Yeah, yeah. So I think my boss and kind of like everyone who I work with. So whether it was the boss I had the conversation with first, or ultimately his boss, the boss above that, kind of thing. That they were all, I knew them all really well, and they all had a starting point of going, actually, what we want is you to get better, because like, you know, so that them showing sort of value in someone and go, look, the important bit, it doesn't matter about what's going to happen over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, however long it takes. What we want is long term is that you are back, one, fit and healthy, but two, sort of back in work. We value you within the company, sort of thing. So even just that sort of like basic level of validation,
Yeah.
is massively supportive. And you're right. Look, I mean, Laura has been incredible and is an incredible person, all that sort of stuff. I sort of play that down really, and all that sort of stuff. She's amazing, and she has been amazing. And I think the hardest thing is like it's constant, and I think that's the hardest thing to kind of like put on someone, is that we're pretty much 4 years down the line, and yes, I am in a better place, but I'm not better, if that makes sense. I'm not fixed. I'm just a lot more aware of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the hardest thing is that these sorts of things, like, if you've got a cold, especially as a man flu type thing, I'm going to be a pain in the neck for a couple of days, and I'm going to moan about it constantly.
Yeah.
But it'll be a couple of days, and you can get over that. I think the hardest thing is that actually these things can take a long time, and I do feel an incredible amount of like guilt from that side of things. Is going like, you've signed up to this, in the loosest sense of getting married, and you've signed up to this, and this is hard. This is hard for me, but it's hard for and she gets I suppose she gets some of the good bits when I'm feeling good, I guess, but she gets a lot of the rubbish end of it a lot of the time, and that's a massive burden. That isn't It isn't easy to share wider. So it's so having some, I mean, without her, like, and without Percy, my daughter, as well, like, I wouldn't be able to be here talking about it. I wouldn't be here in any sense, I guess. But there is that bit going, it's a massive strain on everything. And that is the hard bit, I think, is one, getting the diagnosis and getting that support initially is great, and getting through that initial period, and then it's right now we're in for like a hard slog. And that's massively important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. In our training, we talk a lot about supporting people who are supporting people that might be experiencing mental health issues, that the ripple effect. But I mean, that's true of many relationships, isn't it? And physical illness and all sorts of things can mean that dynamics and needs to support change in time. So you've got your supportive wife, supportive boss. You had to find yourself in an organization that had really good access to private medical care, which has clearly made a big difference for you. But actually, I think it's really important that even if companies aren't in a position to do that, that sort of understanding and training and empathy and focus on the person and that person's well-being, what a difference that can make to people's ability to thrive in their organizations. But it's something I'm aware of. So I've run small companies and been involved with smaller charities and employer assistance programs, EAPs. I don't know if you. So these actually give people access to counselling support, financial support, or legal support, often in a really timely manner, and are not nearly as expensive, I think, as companies think. I looked into it for a charity that I support, and it was something like £6 per person per month or something, but it sort of depends how many people you've got in your organisation. So if somebody's watching this and they think, but it's all very well for you, but there's no way we've got the ability to do that, I really recommend people look into employers assistance programs, because they can make all the difference in bridging that gap between someone getting NHS support and private support. And the financial stuff, I think, we know that financial concerns are a huge element of people's vulnerability to mental illness. And sadly, we know that there are the men of your sort of age are often the most vulnerable people to severe mental illness and suicide. And I think that part of that is because it's the part of life where you feel like you're supposed to be the responsible one, you're supposed to be the strong one, you're supposed to be there to look after and provide, and not be the one being looked after and provided for. So I think acknowledging that and being able to provide support emotionally as well as practically feels, from your story, like that's made all the difference in terms of the recovery journey that you are on.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, as I say, like, I was fortunate. I work for an insurance company who does this sort of stuff, so I had the cover through work that I knew that once my pay through work ended, and I had a decent sort of a decent number of months paid through work, that I had an income protection policy which kicks in and pays for me to basically pays my income till I go back to work. So I was in a really fortunate position of having that, and taking that. But there's still financial pressure, there's still financial strains, because you're still looking at going, can genuinely, if I never go back to work, what's that look like? Could we at the time we were saving up to buy somewhere, so we kind of like going, oh, we've got money in the bank, but that's for something like that's really important. We're like, that's for the rest of our life, and you do start worrying about like, if this is long term, what's it going to mean for just day to day life, but also is it going to affect things like right the way through to if I get to retirement and pension sort of stuff? Will it
Yeah,
affect
yeah.
that if I
Right.
lose my income, or like
Yeah,
everything
yeah, right.
comes into it? And
I,
as I say, I was in a fortunate position of going, actually, most of that stuff was taken off my plate because of work. But just one thing that you mentioned about optional support. So you're absolutely right. So some firms, depending on the size, will be able to have that EAP type thing set up. Um, some people might have it through products elsewhere that they might not realize. So I know, again, without talking about who I work for and what they do and
yeah.
stuff, but I know most companies now in life insurance, for example, either have included or will have included some sort of support offering. So whether it's a face-to-face thing or a telephone-based thing,
Right.
uh, with counselling support and stuff like that. So there are
Okay.
financial products out there that have some of this stuff built in. Um, and actually, people might have them already and just not realize or not realize that it's covered. So I know, again, one of the things I said to Laura is because she's got policy where she has an app on her phone that includes, I think it's got private GP on there, and it's also got
Okay.
counselling support on there. I was like, look, just use that, even if it's just to speak to someone for a bit. You've got an in to do that. So, and I'd say most companies in the market now offer something in that sort of space. So again, it's like there's a lot of
Really
support
good
out
tip.
there. It's if you've got something that you can access, even if it's just a little bit helpful, that's great. But I think the key bit you mentioned in terms of like whether it's speaking to a dedicated kind of like occupational health service through work or an employee assistance program, or even just at the basic level of an employer going, you need to go and speak to someone, and you need to go and speak to, like, start off at your GP, start off at anyone. But the most important thing is you get speaking to someone and you get that first step of the journey out of the way. I think that's the biggest thing an employer can do. If you've got all the bells and whistles and all the other support and stuff you can provide, then that is amazing. But the most fundamental thing is good. You need to speak to a professional. You need to get into speaking to someone, because that is the thing that saves lives, essentially.
Yeah, 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 you're absolutely right. And I think some people need to hear that that's okay and that they warrant it. And that, yes,
Mm,
GPs are really busy. And yes, you might have to wait 40 minutes for the
mm,
receptionist to pick up, but blimey heck, you really deserve it and you need it and it's warranted. And I think, yes, sometimes maybe we're a bit inclined to talk it down a bit. Why don't you just take a bit of time off, have a bit of a rest, you'll be okay.
mm,
Actually, you're absolutely right. Encouraging someone to talk to a professional who can then make the assessment about actually whether it is just that they need a bit of a rest or indeed they need more medical professional intervention.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely right. And something I hadn't realised until I spoke to you was that critical critical
Critical illness,
critical illness insurance and income
income protection.
protection. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good job. Got professional in the room. Um, I don't think I had considered that they are there to support people who have mental health issues as well. So that's a really important thing I think for people to
So I
do.
yeah, I think that's the again, not to do any sort of financial promotion or tell anyone about
No,
any of this sort of thing.
I
But
didn't know
I
though.
think you may a lot of people may already have these policies in place and not realize they do stuff. I
Yeah,
think that's the key bit. Look, I guess the difficulty with all these sorts of things and all insurance products is they need to be in place before anything happens. That's the tricky bit. So often
yeah,
people find out they've got a need for it too late, which is devastating. You know that's awful.
yeah,
But if people have spoken to someone before and they've recommended one of those products, there might be, whether there's full cover in place, whether there's partial something in place, or whether they've just got support around them. Again, as I say, there might be other bits of the policy that can help at that time. So you know, in an ideal world, everyone would have everything covered, and all our possibility would have absolutely every type of insurance covered, and it, you know, that would be great. But realistically, that doesn't happen. So, if you've got the policies already, great. There's support there. You can go through that. They may have additional items within it, so additional value-added services that add things like GP support and counselling support, or they might cover the illness, or they might cover the sort of you being off work. So yeah, so I think, look, I've worked in insurance and sort of the advice world for a long time, nearly 20 years, which is terrifying, right? I started off very, very young, obviously. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, I am massive. I've always been a massive advocate of having that sort of stuff in place. But I think the key bit is if someone is in a situation where they're struggling, if they've got the cover already in place, that is what it's there for. So that's where you can speak to them. That's where you can go through things. And I'd say if you don't have that cover in place, I think the key bit is you still speak to someone. So yes, the GP is a great route, and a lot of GP surgeries now will have specific dedicated services around mental health, and they're massively stretched and they're massively underfunded, and you know, again, that's a real issue, but
That's what
there's also a lot of support around it. Yeah, they're absolutely there to be used.
this is life-saving stuff. You know, it's not, you know, it is big stuff, and I think it is recognized as such. And of course, there's voluntary organizations out there too on this. So if you do find yourself in a completely, you know, in a crisis situation and you don't know where to turn, Shout. If people have come across Shout, there's a 24-hour text service who are brilliant. Samaritans, obviously, and then depending on what your issues are, Young Minds, Beat, the eating disorders. There are other ways of having that initial conversation if there is any barriers towards talking to the GP. But I agree with you, GP is always a good place to start. So let's talk about recovery. So when we talk about recovery, I hate saying it because it sounds so cheesy, but we talk about it in our training in terms of it being a journey rather than a destination, and that journey is often a bit undulating, and you'll have some times that feel better than others, but you're always moving forward, even though sometimes it feels more difficult than others, as I say. So you would you regard yourself as on that journey?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, on a positive day, yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I think that is. I would look, if I look at it, even from like basic metrics of trying to work out how far along they are. So I was going from daily panic attack type or anxiety attack type situations to a few times a week to now where I'm probably maybe once a month or something like that. You know, like, so even just like being able to. And I think the key bit is in terms of my recovery is I'm at the stage where now I recognize some of the signs. I recognize some of the I hate the word trigger, but I can't think of another word for it. I recognize some of the triggers. I recognize some of the sort of the I'm getting to the point, and then that's where I can like pause. I can go through some of the like breathing therapies and all that sort of stuff that I've picked up, and try and minimize it. So I can either stop myself having a panic attack, the ideal situation, or I can kind of go, I can't avoid this one, but this is an awful phrasing on it. We'll get in and out as quickly as possible. So we'll have the panic attack, we'll get sorted, and then we'll recover, we'll get on the rest of your days. So it's not wiping us out for the full day, the full week, whatever.
And I think that's really a realistic understanding of recovery within mental health. That, you know, for some people, they get to a point where they're absolutely symptom free. It's a past memory, and it's completely sort of separate from the life they now live, and that is possible, and that's amazing. But for lots of people, recovery is about being in control of your decisions, being able to do the things you want to do in life, having the supports around you that you need, and I think that self-awareness, understanding your signs, being able to nip things in the bud that maybe you wouldn't have been able to do before you had worked with therapists or whatever to identify what those things are. Are there people around you who know what to look out for on your behalf? Have you ever done we talk about a wellness recovery action plan? In fact, that's another video if anybody wants to watch it on the website, where we highlight what happens for us. Have you done that formally or informally with anybody around you?
Um, so yeah, we definitely have conversations. So since Laura's had a session with it previously, we've had conversations with it.
Oh, is it what, since Laura did the training with me?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
So
Have you
we've
been
had.
mental health first aided? Good
I
on Laura.
have. I have. And yeah. So we've had conversations. We haven't got anything kind of planned within it, I guess, yet. I think I wasn't in a great place when the conversation was brought up, to
Right,
be
right.
honest. So
And
I
that
was
is
I was kind of like,
important. Yeah.
yeah, I was kind of like not ready for it, or for whatever reason in my head I took it like as I'd been doing something wrong. So
Okay.
nothing. It was purely I reacted badly to it,
Right, right.
which isn't great. But yeah, so I think Laura's really tuned into. She knows when I'm doing it, and I'm a lot better at telling her as well. So I'm a lot more like going. I'm able to, even if it's just like I can, even if she's in the same house, I can text her, so I don't
Yeah,
have to get the words out. I can
yeah,
just,
right.
I'm
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
about to have a
Great.
panic attack, or I need an hour to sit in the dark or whatever.
Yeah,
And I think having that and sort of being able to talk through that is really important. But also like I'm really conscious, and I think the problem I still have is it's the wrong approach for it, and I know it's the wrong approach for it. But I'm really conscious of trying to like shield Percy away from it, and
right.
I still have that parental guilt about having an issue because like how do you explain to a 3-year-old that I'm essentially crying over nothing? Like that's sort of like going, how do I broach that subject? I think that's still something we could be better at, or I could be better at. It's kind of like it's just this is what's happening. Um, and that's the bit we probably should have a plan in. I think I too often fall back on the plan and just going, I'll just hide away. I'll shield it from everything. I'll go away. I'll stay upstairs, whatever, or I'll ask Laura to take Percy to her grandparents or whatever. Like that sort of
Right.
protecting bit still comes into it. But yeah, I think we're getting better. And again, we're sort of a road to recovery, I guess, but it's a road to dealing with this sort of stuff as much as anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what about at work?
Mhm.
Anything similar at work? Do people at work know if you're not quite yourself?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. So I've been again, as I sort of said when I approached therapy, a big thing for me was just like it's who I am. Just accept it and tell everyone. I mean, the reason I can do stuff like this is part of that. So I've done articles at work as part of, I think we did one as part of November, maybe last year, sort of the men's mental health stuff. So I certainly done internal things with Mental Health Awareness Week, it might have been actually. So I've done internal things. I've also done quite a lot of where I've stood up in front of like big sales meetings or big sort of all employee meetings and told my story. I guess the interesting bit, because we work in the industry, it's almost like going, look, here's what a client's going through. Yes, I work for a company, but here's what a client might be experiencing. Here's what an actual end customer might be dealing with at the same time as trying to deal with an insurance company. So I've kind of stood up and did a lot of talking about like just telling my story, what happened, why it's happened, what the recovery sort of process looked like, or how I got back to work. And I've also done sort of an article last year as part of, as I say, part of November, that was picked up by, I was going to say the press. It wasn't. It was an industry magazine
Right,
essentially.
right, right.
So it was got quite a lot of traction within the industry, but our industry is a really small one outside of outside the real world. So yeah, so I've been really open with what I've gone through, what I'm going through. And again, at certain times I'll need to have some time to go off to therapy, and that's been absolutely fine and supported and stuff like that. And if I ever got to the point where I needed to be off work or whatever, I know I've got that support around to deal with it. So yeah, I think on an ongoing basis they're really supportive and they're really understanding. Good, like I can't do that
Right.
today.
Yeah, right. Oh, Adam, I mean, I'm blown away. It always blows me away that, you know, people that have experienced really, really tough stuff, and in some cases, yours included, you know, still dealing with it, but yet want to use that experience to help other people. And I think, you know, particularly for men, you know, it's less common that men feel able to talk about their experiences, particularly in a work environment, because they're worried about any stigma or discrimination that might come with that. And it feels to me like it's absolutely vital. You know, if someone in your organization hears you and hears about the support and the journey that you've had, and they are struggling, they are much more likely to be able to ask for help and support, hopefully at an earlier stage that you got to, so they don't have the life-limiting experience that you've had. So I'm so grateful that you've shared your story with us. I'm gonna do a little sort of instructional video. So anybody who's watching this, I'm gonna do like a bit. I'm gonna try to pull together the learning that we've had from you, Adam, today, in terms of what's made a difference, what would have made things more difficult, and the sorts of signs and things that you've talked about, and hope that other people can maybe, you know, make some changes for themselves or for people they work with, having listened to what you've shared. Thank you.
That's great. No, that's fine. I mean, as I said, I think the amazing thing, and it's obviously not why we do this sort of thing, but the amazing thing, I think, every time I talk about this, or if I wrote about it or whatever, I'm blown away. I shouldn't be. I really shouldn't be. I'm blown away by the number of people who reach out and talk about it. And you know, and I think that is an incredible thing. So go like, I kind of take the approach like, if I can get one person just to, like, when they need to pick up the phone and speak to someone or go and see their doctor or whatever, that'd be incredible. But the number of people that are going through this sort of stuff and sometimes just need the tiniest little nudge in the direction of speaking about it. I think that's the incredible thing. So yeah, I'm sort of hoping that by you doing what you're doing and talking about it and everyone else, there's loads of stuff going on at the minute that is raising that awareness. Just if we can just prompt one more person, and it's always just one more person all the way through, sort of thing, that we can make some massive changes, sort of thing. So yeah, thanks for your time. I'll get off me sort of soapbox now and stop talking
It's a
because I
brilliant
could go on
soapbox to be
forever
on.
about it. Yeah.
Long may you be on it. Look, take care, Adam. Love to your family, and thank you everyone for watching. Again, look at the website www.openmindsmentalhealth.co.uk for other films and the instructional video that go with this. Thanks everyone. Thanks, Adam.